On the 6th of June, 1944, USS Slater and her crew woke up to find themselves moored in berth E5 at Murray's Anchorage in Bermuda. 30 fathoms of her port chain were out in 7 fathoms of water. At 06:55, Slater got underway for the day's operating area. Once she cleared the narrows channel, the daily general quarters exercise commenced and all men manned their battle stations. Exercise Sugar 8 was commenced at 08:20, and 35 minutes later, the ship secured from general quarters. Condition Baker was set, meaning all exterior hatches were shut. Just after 0900, it was reported to the captain that the SL radar had become inoperable. The Slater's surface search radar is a model SL. Like the SA set, the surface search radar could detect both ships and airplanes, but only if the planes were flying below 3,000 feet. The SL radar could detect a large ship at 23 miles, a small ship at 16 miles, a surface submarine at 8 miles, a periscope at 2 miles, buoys at 4 miles, and low-flying planes from 13 to 20 miles. In the afternoon, 23 depth charge boosters were thrown overboard after an inspection found them to be in bad condition. Sugar 8 concluded at 14:30, and shortly after, a man-overboard drill was conducted. The victim was rescued in less than 10 minutes. At 15:51, another fire drill was conducted, but this time the fire was found to be in gun 31. Within a minute, the first streams of water were dousing the invisible flames, and Slater secured from general quarters, and the fire drill was concluded. Slater's crew returned to buoy C5 in Great Sound Bay, and USS Carter DE-112 moored along her starboard side. Later that evening, USS McCoy Reynolds DE-440 moored to Slater's port side. At 2000, 100 plaster-loaded Hedgehog projectiles were received from Hamel. The next day, all 3 ships got underway for the operating area. Following morning muster, general quarters was exercised, which was secured at 08:58. Afterwards, a steering casualty drill was exercised, with after steering taking control. Once she arrived in the operating area, exercise Sugar 5 began. G.E. McLeod's Seaman First Class was added to the sick list this morning with cat fever, but it wasn't bad enough to warrant transferring him off the ship. Slater's crew continued to exercise with a submerged submarine, presumably the Maria, from last week. During the exercise, 86 plaster-loaded Hedgehogs were expended. Upon completion, Slater returned to Murray's Anchorage and moored in 38 feet of water with 30 fathoms of chain, with her fellow destroyer escorts Carter and McCoy Reynolds. For the remainder of the day, her officers practiced taking bearings of shore landmarks, and this continued into the next morning. On the 8th, a new destroyer escort joined the party, USS Walter C. Wann, DE-412. Anchor was weighed at 0700, and Slater entered the Narrows Channel, and her crew went to general quarters. Once she cleared the channel, her crew practiced a refueling drill with the oiler USS Chicopee, AO-34. Lines and hoses were thrown to the oiler with 50 feet between them. Once this was completed, Slater sailed for the operating area at 10 knots. G.E. McLeod, Seaman First Class, remained on the sick list. With visibility decreasing to 8 miles, Sugar 6 was commenced at 12:15. Another day, another fire drill. This one was in the paint locker, and unlike the previous drills, this one lasted over 10 minutes. Sugar 6 ended later that evening, and Slater returned to Great Sound Bay and moored along Carter's port side with 6 lines. Slater's shakedown continued the next day when she got underway at 06:32, with the captain at the con and the navigator on the bridge. Her crew was ordered to general quarters, which was secured after morning muster. McLeod is no longer on the sick list, so he must be feeling a little bit better. And once Slater exited the channel and entered the operating area, anti-submarine exercises began. By the end of this, 36 plaster-loaded projectiles had been fired. The submarine was allowed to surface, and together with Carter, they escorted the sub back to Bermuda. After mooring to buoy C7 with Carter, Charles H. Lewis, Seaman Second Class, was transferred to Hamel for medical treatment. While acting as mess cook, he had slipped on the ladder to C205 aft steering. He injured both his left knee and back, where his leg went through the rung. I'm not sure what ladder he was descending. It may have been the ladder leading to berthing compartment C203L, or possibly a small vertical ladder leading directly into C205. A second sailor, S.E. Lauder, Seaman Second Class, was injured in an altercation with A.G. Hall, Seaman First Class, who was acting as a bosun's mate of the watch, resulting in a cut to his cheek. Later that evening, Clinton Folds, Seaman Second Class, was also transferred to Hamel for an unknown reason. He is not listed in Hamel's muster roll for June of 1944 like the others that were transferred for medical treatments. Lewis returned to the ship that evening after being patched up following his fall. On the 10th, Slater got underway for further training exercises. After clearing the channel, her speed was increased to 15 knots and she began sailing with Task Unit 23.1.2. The convoy flag was in the fleet tug USS Cherokee, AT-66, and the escort flag was in USS McCoy Reynolds, DE-440. The destroyer escorts Carter, Walter C. Wann, and USS Abercrombie, DE-343 were also present. This formidable fleet began their training exercises shortly after 0900. Lauder and Lewis remained on the sick list. General quarters at 10:34 when the WAN made contact with the target craft, and Slater took over command of the task unit. At 10:08, Reynolds took command with CTU, Command Task Unit, now aboard. The submarine they were training with was discovered by Reynolds at 13:51, and Slater began assisting with the search. All this was completed at 14:32, and the ships returned to their berthing at buoy E5. Lauder, who had been injured in an altercation the previous day, was sent to Hamel for observation. The 11th of June, and Slater's crew is running both the number 1 and number 3 service generator.
Ready? Yeah, go ahead. What's the drop time?
At 0640, she was underway from her berth, following Reynolds and Carter. With morning muster, the only two that were absent were Lauder and Folds, who were both on Hamel for medical treatments. Exercise Sugar 3 commenced, and Slater escorted a friendly submarine to the operating area. They began hunting the submerged sub at 11:59. Lewis, the sailor injured on the ladder, was added to the sick list. Sugar 13 began at 1200, and Slater was assigned duty as the conning ship, as USS Cronin DE-704 attacked the sub. Roles were then reversed, and Slater was given the opportunity to hunt. They completed this at 1600, and Slater sailed independently at 15 knots to her anchorage. Speed was changed shortly after to flank. As she entered the Dundonald Channel at 1920, the engine room reported no control on the engines, and Slater was forced to drop her port anchor to stop. 10 minutes later, power was restored, anchor was weighed, and she proceeded to her berth in Great Sound, with 30 fathoms of chain to port and 7 fathoms of water. On the final day of the week, the port anchor was weighed, and she got underway at 0628. After leaving the channel, captain's mast was held for C.F. Copeland, Seaman 2nd Class. He was awarded summary court-martial for being AWOL, absent without leave, for 3 days earlier in May. A.G. Hall, Seaman 1st Class, was given a bad conduct discharge for striking S.L. Lauder a few days prior. Later that day, Slater assumed OCE, Officer Conducting Exercises, and Oboe 11 began. During this drill, Slater expended 1 training torpedo. After a successful firing, the motor whaleboat was lowered, and the torpedo was brought back on board. Once completed, the destroyer escorts came together for an attack exercise. Reynolds acted as the guide ship, Slater the target. As the other ships sailed past, they illuminated Slater with their 24-inch searchlights. Just prior to midnight, they concluded the exercise, and Slater returned to the convoy. They continued sailing into the early morning hours of the 13th. And that's it for another look into Slater's World War II tech logs. Be sure to tune in next week as Slater continues her shakedown in Bermuda. A hole is going to open up in Slater's hull, and she will take on water, learn how that happened, and how her crew reacted. As always, leave us a comment below, click that thumbs up button, and consider subscribing. By doing this, you are helping grow our YouTube channel and increasing publicity of USS Slater, allowing for us to continue teaching generations to come about the Grady's generation. Until next week, take care.